Over the last decade, I, like many of you, have met people from all walks of life. I've seen that experiences such as homelessness, addiction, and poor mental health are often grounded in a difficult childhood.
A stunning royal showdown has shaken Buckingham Palace to its core.
Through this patronage, I have learnt that delivering the best possible palliative care to children.
In a move no one saw coming, Princess Catherine reportedly issued an ultimatum that has sent shockwaves through the monarchy, refusing to attend King Charles's coronation unless Queen Camilla's family is completely cut from all royal affairs. Behind the palace gates, whispers of tension.
It's important to look after their well-being because those are the people that are raising children today.
Yeah, exactly right. And
power and betrayal.
From blue-blooded aristocracy and a background perhaps that people cannot relate to. She comes from
are spiraling into chaos.
I have learnt that delivering the best possible palliative care to children is vital.
But what could have driven the future queen to take such a bold stand? And what does it mean for the crown's fragile unity?
And asking for help should not be seen as a sign of weakness.
The night, the crown trembled. It began on a silent night when the corridors of Buckingham Palace lay steeped in stillness and secrecy. Beneath the flicker of dim light, a meeting unfolded that no one was ever meant to witness, one that would quietly rewrite royal history. King Charles sat alone in his private study, lost in thought, when the door opened without warning. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, entered with calm poise and quiet purpose. She neither bowed nor hesitated. Instead, she sat across from the king and met his eyes with unflinching resolve. What she spoke next shattered centuries of royal restraint. Catherine declared that unless Laura Lopes and Tom Parker Bowles, Queen Camilla's children from her previous marriage, were removed from all royal affairs, she would refuse to take part in the coronation. Her words struck the air like a thunderclap in the stillness. For generations, royal women had been expected to obey in silence, to bend beneath tradition. But in that instant, Catherine defied the unspoken rule. Charles, taken aback, tried to temper the conversation with diplomacy, yet her gaze never softened. She was not issuing a threat, but a truth that would not bend. The weight of her demand filled the room like a storm gathering strength. For the first time, the king sensed his command faltering before a new kind of power. The calm conviction of the woman who would one day be queen. Then came the silence that changed everything. Prince William stood beside his wife, quiet yet resolute. He did not speak. He did not need to. His very presence was a declaration. The king saw, with painful clarity, that his son's loyalty no longer belonged solely to him. In that moment, a line was drawn, not between enemies, but between generations, between an old order and the one rising to replace it. As Catherine and William left the room, the sound of the closing door echoed like a final judgment. The king remained seated in the flickering light, his reflection staring back at him, a man torn between duty and love, between his crown and his blood. For decades, Charles had balanced public duty and private desire, but now he faced a choice that struck at the heart of both. Whispers soon rippled through the palace. Courtiers exchanged wary glances, advisors convened behind closed doors, and the golden calm of the approaching coronation began to fracture. What should have been a celebration of unity now stood on the brink of scandal. Catherine's ultimatum had pierced the core of royal harmony, shaking not only the monarchy's image, but its future. That night, within walls lined with portraits of kings and queens long gone, the monarchy's balance shifted. The crown trembled, not from rebellion or politics, but from conviction, the quiet courage of a woman who dared to protect its purity. Catherine has drawn a bold line within the royal circle, making it clear that Queen Camilla's children should be barred from all royal duties. But what drove her to take such a daring stand? And where does her husband truly stand on her bold declaration? Now, let's uncover the demand that redefined royal power. The unseen war within the palace walls. What made Catherine's demand so explosive was not merely its boldness, but the precision with which it was delivered. She didn't speak in vague terms or soft suggestions. She named names, and in doing so, shattered a silence that had lingered for generations. Laura Lopes and Tom Parker Bowles, Queen Camilla's children from her previous marriage, had always floated quietly along the edges of royal life. They were present, visible and tolerated, yet rarely discussed. Their proximity to the crown had never been questioned. Until now. Catherine's decision to challenge their involvement wasn't driven by hostility or rivalry. It was born from principle, a deep symbolic conviction about the meaning of royal blood. Her words drew an unmistakable boundary between those born into the monarchy and those connected only by marriage. For centuries, that invisible line had existed, respected, but never spoken aloud. In one conversation, Catherine gave that silent rule a voice, and the effect was seismic. Behind the palace's gilded doors, tension brewed like a storm. In recent months, Camilla's family had been seen more often at official events. Their presence, once quiet and peripheral, was becoming central. They were seated closer to senior royals during ceremonies, included in discussions once reserved for those bound by the royal lineage, and increasingly visible to the public. To ordinary observers, it appeared to be an image of togetherness. The modern royal family blending tradition with compassion. But to those within the palace, it looked alarmingly different. It looked like a gradual blending of lines that were never meant to blur. A subtle but steady expansion of influence. For years, Catherine had embodied the role expected of her, the perfect consort, composed, diplomatic, and silent. She smiled when expected, spoke carefully, and followed the unwritten rules of restraint. But as the coronation drew near, something shifted. The future of the monarchy, her children's future, was at stake. Silence, once her shield, had become a weakness she could no longer afford, and she was not standing alone. At her side was Prince William, calm, firm, and unshakable. His silence wasn't indifference, it was support. The quiet between them carried more unity than any declaration could. Those who witnessed that moment understood immediately. This was not one woman's rebellion. It was a shared conviction between the future king and queen, a stand taken not in anger, but in protection of the institution they would someday lead. King Charles, wise from years of balancing politics and family, instantly recognized what he was facing. This wasn't mutiny, it was transition. 2 generations, 2 visions of monarchy. His built on compromise, theirs built on clarity. We're now colliding behind the closed doors of Buckingham Palace. And as the echoes of Catherine's words faded into the night, one truth became undeniable. The crown was beginning to shift. Catherine's daring move has unearthed secrets the palace hoped would stay hidden. But has Camilla's family really stepped too far into the royal territory? And are there other royals who agree with Catherine's stand? Now, let's uncover how Camilla's family quietly redrew the royal lines of power. The silent infiltration. To truly understand the storm that later shook the crown, one must first look back to the quiet, unassuming years when Camilla's family began their slow and subtle rise within royal circles. At first, their presence seemed innocent, even endearing. Laura Lopes, Camilla's daughter, appeared occasionally at weddings, christenings, and formal gatherings. She smiled politely, blended into the background, and seemed content to remain there. But as the years went by, her presence evolved. What began as attendance gradually turned into participation. Observers began to notice small but telling changes. Laura was no longer merely part of the audience. She was seated beside senior royals, included in private meetings, and positioned in spaces traditionally reserved for those of royal blood. Her ease within those sacred circles raised quiet eyebrows, but no open objections, at least not yet. Then came Tom Parker Bowles, Camilla's son. To the public, he was a well-known food critic and author, charismatic, witty, and seemingly detached from royal affairs. Yet behind the palace walls, whispers told a different story. Tom had become a quiet counselor to his mother, offering opinions on how the royal household should present itself to the world. He helped shape tone, messaging, and image, subtle contributions that carried unexpected influence. His hand was invisible, but his impact was undeniable. Among palace aides, a discreet phrase began to circulate: the unofficial branch. It described a growing sphere of influence, a shadow family with no official titles, no royal duties, yet unsettlingly close to the heart of power. The monarchy, built for centuries on lineage and precision, was beginning to bend, reshaped by soft persuasion and quiet access. Small gestures soon turned into silent skirmishes. Invitations were sent without Catherine's approval. Seating arrangements were subtly altered. Entrances once reserved for the highest-ranking royals were shared. It wasn't open defiance. It was something far more dangerous: erosion from within. It was Princess Anne and Prince Edward who first voiced unease. They saw what others chose to ignore. To them, tradition wasn't restriction. It was protection, a code that had kept the crown unshaken for generations. And now, that code was being rewritten. The breaking point arrived not during a scandal, but at something as innocent as a coronation rehearsal. Catherine's eyes fell upon the line of royal children. There, before her, stood Camilla's granddaughter, positioned ahead of Princess Charlotte. It was a small detail, easily overlooked, but to Catherine, it spoke volumes. This was not an accident, it was a statement. Her smile faded, though her composure never broke. William noticed immediately. What followed was a quiet but sharp exchange between him and Camilla, a disagreement disguised as casual conversation. The order was swiftly corrected, but the damage lingered. That night, Catherine made a silent vow. Never again would royal boundaries be blurred. Never again would outsiders shape the order of the crown. The calm that followed was not surrender. It was strategy. Catherine has made it clear that Camilla's family must not cross royal boundaries or rise within the royal circle. But how far is Catherine truly willing to go to defend that line? And could this be the real reason she defied royal protocol before? Let's find out. The Easter that raised eyebrows. It was a bright, peaceful morning at Windsor on the 20th of April, when the royal family gathered at St. George's Chapel for their traditional Easter service, a yearly event steeped in ceremony and symbolism. The crisp spring air carried the soft toll of chapel bells as crowds lined the cobblestone streets, hoping to catch a glimpse of King Charles III, Queen Camilla, and the other senior royals arriving in elegant procession. But among the polished smiles and waving hands, there was one question whispered through the crowd. Where were the Prince and Princess of Wales? Prince William, Princess Catherine, and their 3 children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, were nowhere to be seen. Their absence wasn't just noticed, it was impossible to ignore. The Easter service, a cornerstone of royal tradition, had always been a moment of unity, the family's public show of togetherness under the watchful eyes of the world. Yet this year, the space they left empty spoke louder than any sermon delivered that morning. As King Charles and Queen Camilla made their way into the chapel, surrounded by other members of the royal family, speculation began to ripple through the media and public alike. The Wales family, as reports later confirmed, had chosen to spend the weekend quietly at their country home in Norfolk, far from the royal spotlight, far from the grandeur of Windsor. For some, it seemed a simple family choice, a private retreat for a young family seeking peace. But, for others, it hinted at something deeper, a silent statement beneath the calm surface of royal life. The decision came at a delicate time for the monarchy. With the king continuing his recovery from health concerns and Queen Camilla stepping up to take on more ceremonial duties, every public appearance carried weight. For William and Catherine to step back, not once, but for the second consecutive year, was bound to draw attention. Was it simply a coincidence? Or had the once seamless image of royal unity begun to quietly fray? At Anmer Hall, their Norfolk residence, the couple reportedly spent the weekend enjoying quiet family time, away from the flashing cameras and endless scrutiny. For the children, it meant laughter in the garden, long countryside walks, and the simple joy of being together. For their parents, it was a chance to breathe, away from the formality of palace life. Still, the symbolism of their absence lingered. Every royal event is a message. Every seat filled or left vacant carries meaning. In this case, their missing presence at Windsor echoed like a pause between sentences, leaving the world to wonder what it meant. Whether a gesture of privacy, quiet protest, or family focus, the Wales' decision became the weekend's most talked about mystery. Once again, their absence proved that in the royal family, sometimes silence speaks far louder than appearances. The Wales family's quiet absence from the Easter service spoke louder than words. But will Catherine stop there? Or will she take bolder steps to prove she means every word of her stand? Now let's unravel Catherine and Princess Anne's silent alliance that changed the monarchy forever, the bloodline pact. After the quiet tension of the coronation rehearsal, when royal composure masked deep unease, Catherine sought out the one person in the palace who truly understood the silent rules of the crown, Princess Anne. Known for her unflinching loyalty and steel-like wisdom, Anne had witnessed the monarchy weather storms that would have broken lesser souls. She had seen how even the kindest outsiders, when drawn too close to power, could tip the delicate balance of the royal order. When Catherine arrived to speak with her, the air between them was heavy with unspoken truths. Catherine shared her growing fears that the boundaries between royal blood and extended family were being blurred beyond repair. Anne listened in thoughtful silence, her sharp eyes betraying little emotion. When she finally spoke, her words were few, but they carried the weight of history. The crown must remain blood. That single phrase, simple yet fierce, fell like a decree. It was more than advice. It was a reminder of the code their late mother, Queen Elizabeth II, had lived and ruled by. For generations, it had been the monarchy's invisible armor, the understanding that its strength lay in lineage, not in affection, and that hierarchy, not sentiment, held the crown together. Anne warned Catherine that protecting this truth would not come without a cost. To challenge Queen Camilla's family, she explained, was to step into dangerous waters where loyalty, image, and bloodline collided. Catherine understood, but she also knew that the monarchy she would one day inherit could not afford dilution. That evening, something unspoken passed between the two women, a pact not of words, but of purpose. There would be no public alliance, no statements or gestures of solidarity, yet the bond was unmistakable. Anne would stand behind Catherine, not loudly, but with the unmovable quiet of conviction. Days later, the defining moment arrived. The king's private study, once a sanctuary of calm reflection, became the arena of confrontation. Catherine entered, composed yet resolute, with Prince William by her side. King Charles looked up, reading the storm in her eyes before she spoke a word. Her tone was controlled, measured, but unyielding. She repeated her stance clearly, Unless Camilla's children were completely excluded from royal matters, she would not attend the coronation. It was not anger. It was truth, spoken without apology. Charles appealed for unity, his voice heavy with the weight of duty and love. But Catherine stood firm. To her, unity born from compromise was weakness, not peace. In that moment, the monarchy shifted. Behind gilded doors and under the quiet watch of history, a new order took form. From that night forward, it was understood royal power would once again flow through blood, not marriage. And though the world would never witness the confrontation itself, its echo would shape the crown's future long after the final coronation bell had rung. Catherine and Princess Anne have quietly joined forces to protect the royal bloodline, igniting a silent storm within the monarchy. But how will Queen Camilla respond? Will she bow to their demand or fight to defend her place at the heart of royal power? Now, let's dive into the night. Buckingham Palace trembled behind closed doors. The Queen's fury and the battle for legacy. When Queen Camilla first heard of Catherine's ultimatum, the air in Buckingham Palace shifted. What Catherine had calmly described as a matter of royal principle, Camilla heard as a personal attack, a betrayal cloaked in duty. For her, it wasn't politics. It was war. For decades, Camilla had been the woman the world loved to hate. She had survived sneers from the press, icy receptions at royal dinners, and years of being treated as an outsider in the very world she had sacrificed everything to enter. Slowly, painfully, she carved her place beside Charles, not through privilege, but through endurance. Now she was queen consort, finally standing where love and perseverance had carried her. And then came Catherine's demand, sharp, deliberate, and devastating. To insist that Camilla's family be barred from royal involvement was more than a matter of protocol. It was an erasure. To Camilla, it felt like Catherine was trying to undo everything she had fought for, to exile her children from the world she had finally claimed as her own. The Queen's composure shattered. Courtiers would later whisper that her fury echoed through the palace halls that night. One moment she wept in disbelief. The next, she raged with the fire of a woman who had been humiliated too many times before. "How dare she?" she repeated, her voice shaking the quiet corridors. Summoning her children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, she held what aides would later describe as a war council. Tom's words were firm, edged with warning. "She's testing you. Give in once, and she'll erase us forever." Laura, gentler but unwavering, reminded her mother of the long fight they had already won. "You belong here," she said softly. "We all do." Those words reignited something in Camilla. The sadness turned to resolve. This wasn't just a disagreement, it was survival. Catherine's ultimatum was more than a challenge to her influence. It was a strike at her dignity. That night, King Charles found her pacing before the fire, eyes glistening with both fury and hurt. "You and I built this," she told him. "Now she wants to tear it apart." Her voice trembled, not with weakness, but with wounded pride. Charles said little. His silence was heavy, a monarch trapped between wife and son, between love and lineage. In the days that followed, rumors swirled through the palace. Some whispered that the Queen might withdraw from public duties in quiet protest. She never did, but the message was clear. A royal war had begun in silence. Queen Camilla was stunned and saw Catherine's demand as the start of a silent royal war. But will the public side with her or stand behind Catherine in this battle for royal power? Now, let's explore how Catherine's ultimatum became the headline that shook the world. The scandal that shook the crown. It began with a single headline that detonated like a bomb across Britain. The morning paper screamed the unthinkable. Catherine's coronation ultimatum. Future queen refuses to attend unless Camilla's family is out. Within moments, centuries of royal discretion collapsed. The private tensions that had been whispered only in gilded corridors now spilled into the open, igniting a media firestorm that engulfed the monarchy. By noon, Britain was at war, not on the battlefield, but in opinion. Hashtags blazed across social media. Team Catherine versus Team Camilla. Talk shows turned into battlegrounds, and living rooms echoed with debates over loyalty, lineage, and legacy. The monarchy, once revered as an unshakable symbol of unity, had become a story of conflict unfolding in real time. To her supporters, Catherine was a heroine, a protector of tradition, the guardian of royal purity, who dared to defend the institution's sacred order. They saw in her the strength of a future queen, who valued heritage over sentiment, duty over diplomacy. But to her critics, she appeared cold, calculating, even ruthless, someone willing to fracture a family in the name of protocol. Inside Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere was suffocating. The royal communications team scrambled to respond, but every word they drafted seemed to make things worse. Silence, too, became dangerous. It only deepened the mystery. Television cameras lined the palace gates. Reporters dissected every detail. Who smiled? Who looked away? Who wasn't seen? Royal historians called it the most explosive internal crisis since Princess Diana's era. Some warned that if Catherine truly boycotted the coronation, it would mark a constitutional earthquake. Others insisted the monarchy might never recover from the public's loss of faith. Old footage of Catherine resurfaced on every screen. Her calm presence beside William, her devotion to her children, her graceful composure at public events. Slowly, public sentiment shifted. She was no longer painted as the antagonist, but as the silent protector of the crown, a woman standing firm against quiet encroachment. Meanwhile, Camilla's children, Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes, found themselves in an unforgiving spotlight. Once seen as benign figures at royal gatherings, they were suddenly cast as intruders. Every step they took was photographed, every smile analyzed. They had become unwilling symbols in a war they never declared. Within the palace walls, fault lines deepened. Advisors chose sides in whispers, alliances shifted in the dark, and the king himself felt his reign tremble. The House of Windsor, built on centuries of silence, order, and control, was now cracking under the pressure of truth. The question that hung over the nation was simple but devastating. When the family behind the crown breaks apart, can the monarchy itself survive? Catherine's demand shocked Britain, divided the royal family, and challenged centuries of tradition. But will she achieve her goal? And how will the royal elders take control of the unfolding chaos? Let's uncover the answers. The decision that redefined the monarchy. The king's private council chamber, usually a place for calm reflection, became the scene of one of the most defining moments in modern royal history. Around the long oak table sat King Charles, his most trusted advisors, Prince Edward and Princess Anne, the weight of 1,000 years of monarchy pressing upon them all. The air was tense, thick with the awareness that whatever was decided in that room would shape the future of the crown itself. Prince Edward spoke first, his tone steady but heavy with warning. "The crown must always remain untouched by outside influence," he said firmly. "If that line fades, the institution loses its soul." His words lingered unchallenged until Anne's voice cut through the silence, sharp, precise, unflinching. "The crown is inherited," she declared, "not absorbed." Her gaze locked with her brother's. The message was unmistakable. Catherine had been right all along. Advisors followed, their words brutal but necessary. If Catherine refused to attend the coronation, the monarchy's image would shatter before the eyes of the world. "Your reign would begin in division," one warned gravely. And the people's faith in the royal family, already fragile, might never recover. Across the table, Camilla sat in silence until emotion broke through her composure. Tears welled as she reminded Charles of her decades of endurance, the public ridicule, the isolation, the years spent rebuilding her place by his side. "If you do this," she whispered, voice trembling, "you erase me." But Charles already knew the truth that would haunt him. The institution had to come before the individual. It was not cruelty, but duty that guided his decision. When the meeting ended, the verdict was unspoken yet final. Camilla's family would be quietly removed from formal royal involvement. No public announcements, no humiliation, just discreet adjustments. Invitations would vanish, schedules rewritten, and their presence would quietly fade from royal life as if they had never been part of it. Then came Coronation Day. Westminster Abbey shimmered beneath golden light. Trumpets sounded, choirs lifted their voices, and the world watched a ceremony wrapped in grandeur. But behind the splendor lay silence. The absence of Camilla's family was deliberate and glaring. No explanations were offered, only empty spaces that told their own story. Catherine walked with quiet majesty. Her calm presence spoke louder than any proclamation. In that moment, she wasn't just the Princess of Wales. She was the future of the monarchy itself. The woman once seen as dutiful had become its quiet architect. Public opinion transformed. The world hailed her as the Queen-in-Waiting, a figure of dignity and resolve. Even her critics could no longer deny it. Catherine had protected the monarchy from within. And as the final hymn faded through Westminster's grand arches, one truth settled like a whisper across the centuries. This was not just the coronation of King Charles. It was the beginning of Catherine's reign, in all but name. A silent revolution that reshaped the crown forever. So, what do you think the future holds for Camilla's children within the royal circle? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.